স্টার্ট করব স্টার্টিং Good morning, students. Today I'm going to introduce to you the first chapter of geography, that is resources and development. The moment we heard the word resource, what does it means? We have heard about this word. Resource means anything that is available in our environment and that has a capacity to satisfy human needs, provided it is technologically accessible. Now the word technologically accessible, what does it means? It means that human beings have the knowledge to understand the thing and its utility, and they apply their knowledge to convert the material that is present in our environment in order to satisfy human needs. Means they make those material transformed into usable products, right? The second condition which a resource should fulfill is it should be economically feasible. Now economic feasibility, what it means? See, when we get a resource, we should take care of one important thing, that this resource should be affordable or economically accessible to most of the individuals present in a community. If it is affordable, then only they will be able to utilize those products as resource. So the second condition is economic feasibility. The third thing, which is again very important, it should be culturally acceptable. Culturally acceptable signifies that when we decide any particular material found in an environment to use for our needs, its use should be acceptable by the society. Say for example, I'll take the example of a very important resource, that is coal. Now coal, until human has got the knowledge about its utility, about its energy potential, it was not a resource. When human beings have understood how to utilize it by their know-how and they applied their knowledge, that is when they were technologically competent, then only it became a resource. The second thing, that coal's utilization has developed and it has become worldwide when most people started affording this resource. And the third thing, its use has been accepted as a major source of heat and light energy by most part of the world. So hence it is culturally acceptable as a resource, which has led to the development of this particular resource. Now, in order to understand the interdependence between human beings, nature, and the human knowledge, there is a very compact relationship between nature There's a compact relationship between nature, technology, and institutions. It is because of the most vital of all resource, that is human beings. So why human beings are considered the most important of all resource? The point here need to be clarified that what do? They get the essential materials from the nature, but mind you that these materials are not in readily usable form. So what do? They acquire the knowledge of how to use that and how to transform that into useful product, and they apply their knowledge, which is called the technology. Actually, what is technology? It is the application of the latest human knowledge. So what do? They use their knowledge, and when they apply their knowledge while using a particular product available in our environment, they create institutions which leads to the economic development of the region. So hence, it is very, very important that who transforms this material into useful product? It is the human beings. Hence, the importance of human beings in terms of quality is very, very important, and the quality of human resource depends upon the acquirement of knowledge by the human beings and apply the knowledge in order to further develop existing resource. So hence, it's very, very clear. Now here I would like to give one example. Now the example I would like to give here is, see, as a teacher, we use chalk, right? And we use boards, right? Now the chalk which we used, of course, it's a very vital resource, right? Now this particular resource, that is chalk, is it readily available in the nature? It is not. Yes, the raw materials from which the chalk is produced, they are present. Like the ingredient of chalk is the limestone, calcium carbonate. This particular mineral is present. It is for the humans who acquire the knowledge to process that particular material into readily available chalks which we use in the classrooms. So hence it's very, very clear that most of the resources which human use is actually developed by human beings with their knowledge. Here we come to another question. Do you think that resources are free gifts of nature? The answer is no, they are not. They are not free gifts of nature. They are actually the functions of human activities. For example, if you take the example of a paper is a resource, right? But it is not readily available in the nature, right? If you go, into the forest, you won't get a tree which will readily give you the paper. Yes, but the tree might give you the raw material from which the paper can be made. So it is the humans who actually spend their knowledge, right? They invest their knowledge and they find out ways how to create this paper from the pulp of the wood. So, it is very wrong to think that resources are free gifts of nature as assumed by many. Now, there can be a contrary argument to this. Sir, water is available. Water is natural resource. It is readily available. Now, the question is, the potable water which we use at our homes, this is the water. Of course, the source is nature, but it is the humans who make this water potable. It is their knowledge by which they convert this water which is available in nature and remove the impurities and make it safe for consumption for humans. So, it is very wrong to think that resources are free gifts of nature. After this, let's go to the next aspect, that is, how do we classify resource? The classification of resource only into two categories we can make. The one is natural resource and another is man-made resource or human resource. But nature is very vast. If you want to classify natural resource, you have to select several bases on which the natural resources can be classified. So when we talk about the first basis, let's go to the first base, that is origin. On the basis of origin, we can categorize resources into two. That is, one which is a living source, we call it biotic, and another which is the non-living source, that is called abiotic. Now, as the name suggests, biotic resource. Now, biotic resource has living origin, right? Any resource which we extract from the living organisms, right? So, which may include forests, wildlife, etc. These resources are mostly regenerable resources. Now, abiotic resource which comes from the non-living component. Now, the non-living component includes soil, it includes water, it includes air, sunlight, etc. So, on the basis of origin, there are two divisions. One, the living source, biotic, and another is abiotic. Now, in our environment, both these resources are available and they are interdependent in their relationship. Overexploitation of one may leads to depletion of other, or may negatively affect the other resources, right? Now go to the second origin, second basis, which we are talking about on the basis of renewability. What is the word renewability means? That how quickly the resources are regenerable after their utilization. So on the basis of renewability, the resources can be classified into two broad categories. Now those two broad categories are renewable and non-renewable. As the word renewable means, it means the resources that are replenishable in a short period of time. It is regenerable at a short period of time through biological, physical, and chemical processes. So those are renewable resources. And non-renewable resources are those which takes millions of years to regenerate, because their process of formation is very, very slow. So we should be very careful of utilizing the non-renewable resources. We should use these resources in a very judicious manner. Now, further, the renewable resources can be classified into two categories. One, we call it continuous resources, and another is biological resources. Continuous resources are also called flow resources. Now this is that category of renewable resource which are quickly renewable, which renew at a very fast pace. For example, the sunlight, wind, sea waves, all these are renewable at a faster process. But biologically renewable resources are those which has a specific time period for renewable, which has a biological period to renew. For example, trees, wildlife, human beings, we comes under the biologically renewable resources, because each biologically renewable resources have a specific time frame at which they can be renewed. For example, you sow a plant today, it's not that tomorrow it will become a tree. It will take its particular time period, particular biological time period, in order to renew. So those comes under the biologically renewable, those comes under the renewable resources, but they are comparatively take more time compared to continuous or flow resources. Now we come to the non-renewable resources. Now non-renewable resources have further two classifications. One is recyclable, another is non-recyclable. Now, recyclable resources are those resources which can be reused. Those resources, they may be non-renewable, their time of regeneration is longer, but this can be used multiple times. For example, we include all the minerals and fossil fuels under the non-renewable resources, because once it is utilized, it takes long time for regeneration. But certain minerals, like the metals, metallic minerals, can be considered as recyclable resource. Now, why recyclable resource? It is because, suppose take the example of iron ore or iron. See, we use iron and we make product of it, but when it become a scrap, we can reuse it. So I will, if I can reuse it, I will say that particular renewable resource is a recyclable resource. Clear? So it's very, very clear that recyclable renewable resources should be utilized properly or recycled so that the reserves of the non-renewable resource can be maintained for future. After this basis, we go to the next basis, that is on the basis of ownership. So now we are going to discuss that how the resources, now on the basis of ownership, we include both natural and man-made resources, right? So on the basis of ownership, the first one is individual resource. Now individual resource, as the name suggests, if a resource is owned by a particular individual and only he utilizes that particular resource, he or maybe his family. Individual resources are those which is either owned by one individual or a group of individuals. It can be one person or a particular family. That is considered to be individual resource. If you go to the rural areas, you'll find the agricultural fields can be considered as individual resource. The residence where they are living, that is an individual resource. Suppose a farmer is having a tractor, that is his individual resource. Sometimes, you know, some individuals are more prosperous. They may own a pond or may own a water body that comes under the individual resource. But this is only for the use of a particular individual or his family. The second category is called community owned resource. Now community owned resource are those which can be used by community as a whole. So here we can call it, these are the commonly used resource of a particular community. For example, the burial ground. It is meant for all the community members to use it. The grazing ground, where a particular communities, all the people can utilize it for rearing of cattle. Similarly, there are community ponds. If you come to the cities or urban areas, you will find there are parks which can be utilized by all the members of the community. So community-owned resources are basically not only for the welfare of a particular individual, it is for the community as a whole, right? The third category that comes under this is called national resource. See, national resources are those resources which actually comes under the authority of the central government or the state government or the community government. Now the question is, technically all the resources within the political boundaries of a country, can they be called national resource? The answer is yes. And all the resources, it can be an individual or community owned resources, for the welfare of the nation can be utilized as national resource, or it can be utilized. For example, I can give you an example. When there is an emergency, suppose if there is an emergency like war, if a country has attacked India and there are individual resources owned by the people in the bordering areas, say Jammu Kashmir, Rajasthan, or other areas. And it can be their agricultural land, it can be their houses. But when it's a time of emergency, in our constitution also it is written very clearly that individual and community ownership gets suspended and those resources comes under the nation. Nation can utilize that for the public welfare. One more example I would like to give you here for the resources which comes under the national. See, when the government makes railway routes or the roadways, they might have to take away individual and community resources, but for the public good, because it is going to help the individual and community. So in that sense, those resources comes under the national resources. But nevertheless, certain resources are strictly put under the national resource, which cannot be owned individually or by the community. Now let's discuss what are those. Those resources, if you make the list, which includes forests, it includes the mineral wealth, it includes all the rivers, and it includes the territorial forests, minerals, rivers are strictly put under the national resources. Because these resources, few more you can add up into this, like the buildings of national heritage, right? Archaeological buildings. All those also comes under the government supervision or under the authority of state or the national government. But the question is, what do you mean by this territorial water? Now, territorial water, since India has a very long coastline, so with reference to India, if I have to explain to you, territorial water is that stretch of the coastal water up to 12 nautical miles from the coast, that is around 19.6 kilometers, comes purely under the national resources. These resources are safeguarded by the authorities as appointed by the national central government, right? So this territorial water cannot be utilized by any other nations. It is completely under the jurisdiction of the national government, right? So that territorial water, like India has more than 7,500 kilometer length of coastline. So India has a vast stretch of territorial water from which all kind of resources can be utilized by the nation, for the welfare of the nation. So this we talked about the national resources. But there is another category that comes under the ownership, which is called international resource. Now we all know that national resources are under the jurisdiction of the state and the central government. But who monitor the international resource? First of all, which resources considered to be the international resource? These are those resources which do not come under any country's national resource. So these are open seas, which may be beyond their territorial waters, that through which, all the countries may have a right to utilize those resources. So those comes under the international resource. And in terms of who governs this resource, there are international bodies, there are international agencies where most of the countries are members. They have the right to utilize these resources. Now, the point here, which are these agencies? International agencies are United Nations and its several other governing bodies which actually regulate the use of these resources. And this is normally beyond the 200 nautical miles from the country's national resource. Now, international resources, as we know, it will be utilized by all the nations and they have equal right to utilize this. For example, I can give you an example here. The oceanic sea routes, which is either over the Indian Ocean or over the Pacific Ocean or Atlantic Ocean, these international sea routes are normally under the international resources, right? Now the question is, there are certain exclusive rights which are provided to some countries so that they can utilize even those resources which may not fall under their national resource. Now, such exclusive zone of resources given to certain countries has been termed as exclusive economic zone. It is called exclusive economic zone. Many countries have been given this exclusive economic zone rights. Like India has been given a right to explore the minerals that are found beyond 200 nautical miles, right? So they have been given a right to explore the minerals that are found in the Indian Ocean, which may not fall under the territorial water. It is from the territorial water till the 200 nautical miles zone, they have been given this exclusive economic rights. This kind of zone of resources are called exclusive economic zone, right? Like India, many other countries have also been given these kind of rights so that, they can help in, it can help in their economic development. Although India have not started utilizing this resource, but it can be considered as the resource for future use. So the students, today I have explained to you the meaning of resource, what resource means, and what are the three conditions it should fulfill. That is the technological accessibility, economic feasibility, cultural acceptance. And we have also understood that how humans play a very, very important role in the development of a resource, because it is the humans who demands resource and it is the humans who creates the resource for themselves. So human knowledge and their technologically capability is very, very important for the economic development of a particular region. We have also understood that resources are not free gifts of nature, because they use their knowledge in order to extract whatever is available, convert them into useful products. And that led to the development of the economy, and socio-economic development. We have also understood the different ways you can classify the resources. Two broad categories are natural and man-made. We have also understood that natural resources can be classified into several bases. On the basis of origin, biotic and abiotic, living origin and non-living origin. On the basis of renewability, we have discussed there are renewable and non-renewable resources. Renewable resources can be further classified into which are fast renewable, continuous, and which takes a biological period, that is biological resources, biologically renewable resources. We also discussed that the non-renewable resources, since they take a lot of time for regeneration, they can be classified into two. One is recyclable, another is non-recyclable. Recyclable, we have discussed the minerals that can be reused, like the metallic minerals can be reused, comes under the recyclable, and fossil fuels and other rock minerals can come under the non-recyclable. And we have also understood on the basis of who owns the resource, who monitors the resource, there is individual owned, community owned, national and international resources. So thank you, students. We will continue further with the classification next day.